So we are just waiting for a bunch of people to jump on. A lot of people jump on like right last minute. So
Problem.
just be a few minutes.
Problem.
Where's your job site at?
This is in it's like DI and Rainbow.
Okay, awesome. And have you been helping them since it was a lot, or are you
No,
getting
it's a remodel.
awesome? I'm
Yeah,
sure
big
we'll have
remodel.
a bunch of questions about that too.
Yeah, the majority of what I do is remodels, but new builds are nice and clean. It's a little different business. That's all.
Yeah. So do you do more remodels or do you do more building from the ground up?
Majority of what I do is remodels. I
Okay.
like I like it's for me. It's easier to do a new build just because there's less you're dealing with from however many contractors worked on a house over 20, 30 years, and you uncover walls and you find stuff you didn't account for.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we can talk about that too.
Yeah, well, we hope that you'll teach us all about everything.
Yeah, yeah, it's a
So
lot to go over, but there's because every
yeah,
situation
so
is different. Like there's no like exact or perfect way. Everybody does it different too.
yeah, and that's what I like about new builds. There's so many like tract homes in Vegas where it's just
Yeah,
cookie cutter and everything looks
yeah,
the same and it has to be a certain way. Seeing all these homes going in certain areas where they can build whatever they want, I think is pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's definitely the Vegas market is so different than somewhere like where I grew up and outside of Seattle, where everything is pretty much a custom. Like they don't really have track homes like they do in small towns or the East Coast. Out here, everything's the same, and it's just different.
Yeah. And then out here it's like, well, when you get these custom homes, you don't get an HOA.
Yeah,
Um, so that's also very nice. And I think that a lot of people coming from out of town come to Vegas and they're like, everything looks the same. What's shocking to me is that these builders like Toll Brothers and stuff, they're building tract homes that are like millions of dollars. And
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people would just be happier, or people coming in from out of town used to what's in their smaller town, being all different homes. It's just going to become more and more popular
yeah.
to be building, a custom home.
Exactly. So like you go to a different housing market like Tennessee, and over there like Franklin or all outside of the city. Um, every house is just beautiful. It's big. I love that style. It's more timeless. And then
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't do it more in Vegas. It's kind of a mystery because I think those houses that everybody's used to seeing will sell really good here.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more popular, especially with the major remodels that are going on right around the Strip, where we have that Spring Valley area,
Yeah.
um, and people are just completely redoing all those older 1960s homes,
Yeah.
and they have great sized lots to do it on.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen any complete demo, like demolishing the entire home and then rebuilding? Have you seen any of that? I haven't seen any of that yet.
It's pretty rare. I feel like people are just doing mostly remodels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier for the permitting process, and if you're keeping an existing house, it's more efficient, as far as cost. But it would be the cost go up quite a bit to tear a whole house down and rebuild it. So it seems like other areas of the country they do it more often. California and other places.
California, that's where it's pretty popular. All right, well, I just want to get everything started. Everybody, this is Bristol. He is going to be, from here on out, going to be our go-to for any contracting work questions or anything. We can send him to our clients for major remodels and stuff like that, since it is becoming more popular to redo your entire house. And right now, I have a client that's under contract on a lot, and he is going to be building his entire house from the ground up. So that's over on Cameron Street in the southwest corner by the 215 and the 15 where they intersect. So I'm going to be working with Bristol and them to get what they want built on the property. So we do have a few questions lined up that I did send over to Bristol this morning. If you guys have any questions throughout this, if you just want to throw it in the chat, we'll make sure to get those answered either in the, through conversation or at the end of Bristol's walkthrough here. So Bristol, if you could tell us a little bit about you, how you've been doing this, what you did before. Albert did tell me a little bit. You have a history in UFC, which is pretty cool because we are in talks right now about being the preferred realtor for UFC.
Yeah. So I moved to Vegas to be an MMA fighter back in 2008, and that was a crazy time for housing. Obviously, the crash was happening, and it was a good time to move here because, like, pretty much right away, as I was training and fighting, I met my wife Aubrey, and she was a real estate agent, and our first conversation was about real estate and buying a house. So it was kind of meant to be, and we went out for coffee. And I was telling her about this house that I was buying. I was really excited about it. And it was going to be the perfect boys' house. Me and the guys, it's close to the gym. And I was excited to show it to her. So that was like our first date was.
You didn't use her as your realtor?
Yeah. So she was my realtor.
Okay.
So, well, no, I was buying a house with a different realtor. And then I met Aubrey and I was excited. I was like, oh, okay, come look at my house. So we went and previewed the house and I showed it to her and she was looking through the inspection report and she was like, this house is a piece of shit. This is the worst inspection report I've ever seen. And I was like, oh my God. I was embarrassed. I was like, what? I was like, no way. I was like, this is the perfect bachelor house. And then we got to talking about it and she was like, hey, look, she laid it out. She was like, I could find a better house for cheaper in a better area. Just get out of this deal and I'll find you the right house. And I trusted her. I was like, man, she has some great points. And then we ended up finding the perfect house to flip in off St. Rose and Maryland. Those 3 stories there. It was $99,000 was the cost of that house. Wow. Today it's probably like $400,000. But so we flipped our first house back in 2009. I did all the work. She funded for all the materials, and I bought it with an FHA loan. And we put it on the market, and it sold like right away. So I was shocked. We didn't know. In that time, the housing market was crashed, and we sold our first house and made like $74,000. And as a young fighter, I was excited. I thought it was so cool. So we just continued to do that over a period of time. And then HGTV ended up contacting us and wanted us to do a show. So, one thing led to another, and we ended up doing the Flipper Flop Vegas for almost 4 years, filming 3 seasons, and we flipped houses. And, I did all the work and she did the real estate. So we were like super hands-on, but we didn't have a big crew of people. Like, we were on the job site, like I am right now. I'm on the job site working. This is my office. So this is where I prefer to be.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the process of purchasing a lot. So the first thing that your clients are going to do when they're looking to build a home, a custom home, is going to be obviously purchasing a lot. So can you tell us about the first thing to look for when you're looking at a lot? And then once you get under contract, tell us about that, what we do in due diligence, which is the soil report, and anything else that we should be doing besides the soil report.
Yeah, so there's different areas of town. A lot of it just depends. And I hate to say that, it depends on where you're at, but it really does. Like, we have a house in Silverado Ranch, and there's no gas available and there's no sewer. So we have a septic tank and everything's electric. So those factors can add up, and it could deter a buyer if they're really set on, having gas and not wanting to do a septic. So that's a little extra cost. Doing a septic tank and a drain field in more of the rural areas, that could really impact the backyard. You have a huge drain field in the backyard and you can't build on that. So those factors, and
Oh, you're breaking up, Bristol.
Where your lot is.
Bristol, you're breaking up.
I'm gonna go over here because the guys are working. It's kind of loud. All right, hold on.
So tell us about a septic tank. So there is a new law. I'm sure you're aware of it, but we have, I think, 30 years, and everything needs to be off of septic.
Right. So
we have until, I think it's like till 2050.
right. So you're gonna have the cost of doing the septic tank. You could be looking at 15 to 25,000, depending on the size. Each they rate the size of the tanks and the drain field off of how many fixtures that you have in the house. The one I did was a 2,000-gallon tank because I have so many fixtures on the property, so the cost just goes a little bit higher. And then the footprint for the drain field is pretty big, so you kind of have to have a it's an acre lot. We have the space, but that could affect a backyard. If you want to do a pool, you got to really take that into consideration.
Yeah. And so what is the maintenance like on a septic tank?
It's not terrible. It is, once it's installed correctly, you shouldn't have to touch it. Maybe every 2 to 3 years. Really get it drained. It depends on how much you use it, how many people are in the house, how, if people are flushing things down the drain that shouldn't be there.
For you guys? Sorry guys, my computer froze. All right, so now that we're talked about septic, what about hooking up utilities? So hooking up electricity and water, what are the costs involved in that?
Right. So a lot of that depends on how close you are to the existing utilities. In the Southwest, I know that things are getting more developed, so it's closer by, and if it is available. So those are the things you have to do in your due diligence. So check how far away is electric and sewer. Obviously, it goes by per foot. So the electrical charges could be, like $150 a foot. So if you're going, 200 yards, gets pretty expensive.
Yeah. And so there's so many different facets and, all these utilities, all this design, all everything. Who actually do you contact? If I'm the buyer, who do you actually contact in order to get all these things done? Is there one person that you go to? Is that you that does it all, or does the buyer have to do all this themselves?
Right. That's a good question. And that kind of goes hand in hand with how involved the owner wants to be in the process. So like when I do a remodel or a build, it just depends on how involved you want to be. So do you want to do the design? Do you want to pick the product? I have a client that works in, he's a casino executive, and he's like, hey, I'm busy. Here it is. Just do everything, design, build. I don't want to touch a thing. Just show me designs and, I'll say yes or no. And then I have another client that says, hey, I have extra time. I want to do the design, and I'll do some of the legwork to cut down on the cost. So it kind of depends on what your client wants. So you can do legwork. Like you could go to, like, there's a big company like Bravo. They do underground utilities. They could, if you could go and hire them to say, hey, you tell me what it would cost to bring in utilities here. They can give you a good rough estimate because they'll look, they know it so well. They probably know the area, and they can tell you you're probably around, 50 yards, and they can give you a rough estimate. But
there's a lot that one of my clients is looking at right now, another client, that there are electric wires that are on those old wooden poles. Yeah. Is it possible to get those put underground? Would that be on the cost of the buyer, or would that be on the city?
That's a cost to the buyer. So I also have a property too where it's coming in overhead, and it goes overhead across the property to the neighbors.
Mhm.
And so we have to keep it overhead. And that's something that you have to find out before you buy the property, because you're stuck with it. You know, when you buy it, and you could go directly to Nevada Energy and get a quote on that. They can give you a quote directly. They'll send out a rep and tell you, you know, it's probably 25,000 to bring it in underground,
Mhm.
depending on, you know, how far away it is. But yeah, you definitely want to go underground.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. Obviously not the big metal poles that are, you know, they look like they're,
Yeah.
you know, sturdy and stuff like that. But this specific
Right.
lot I'm speaking of, like it's tilted. It looks like the wood is
Yeah, yeah,
rotting. Like that needs
exactly.
to go under right away. What specifically do you do in that process? So would the client contact you and then you
Yeah.
contact NV Energy?
Yeah, so if that's I think probably the best way to do it is just contact me as a builder, and then I'll do all the due diligence for you. And I'll go to the utility companies, I'll go to my, you know, underground contractors and come up with an estimated cost to bring power, water, gas if it's available, and you know, hook up to the sewage system. And then you'll get a rough idea on, okay, here's the cost to just get everything to the house, you know, to get it to the property.
And is that part of the process done alongside like the architect planning and stuff like that? Or do you want to find
Yeah.
that out when you're under contract for the lot?
Right. I would do it when you're your due diligence for the lot. So when, you know, because you don't know what's available, what's not until you really dive into it. Because you don't want to buy the lot and then find out, hey, there's, you know, there's no gas here. My electric bill is going to be too much. You know, it just depends on how big of a house you want to build. All these things you need to find out before you buy the lot. So a lot of times you want to contact the HOA to find out. Sometimes they have a lot, you know, a minimum size house or a maximum size house. You need to find out.
Right. And there's the setbacks. If you are in an HOA, there's required
Right.
setbacks where, you know, we're talking about homes that would probably be in like the ridges or something.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, obviously there you're going to want to build the biggest house possible to get the square footage, to get the, you know, maximize the cost out of it. And, you know, one of your factors, it does seem there are a lot of moving parts. So I understand it's confusing for people because what I encounter a lot of times is, hey, I want to do this remodel or I want to build this house. What's it going to cost me? And it's such an open question. It's hard to answer because that's like saying, hey, I want to go buy a car. How much does a car cost?
Yeah.
Well, it really depends. You know, there's too many options and too many different factors to answer that. And so it's unfortunately you have to incur some cost before you can get a real accurate estimate. And an accurate estimate needs a full set of plans with materials and a good design. And I find too, this kind of an industry thing to say is like the better the plans and the more solid the design, the lower the cost of construction can be.
So once somebody first contacts you,
Right.
do you do these quotes and services? Is that free of cost? That's just a quote. When is the first time somebody is going to have to pull out their wallet?
Yeah.
Pocketbook and dated myself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great question. I don't do it like a full free estimate. I wouldn't do that because I want to provide value for the client. So I want to give them something of value. And in order to do that, I have to charge for it. And it's not a huge fee. It's just something small, a retainer. And it's just kind of, if I'm going to estimate a house, it'll take me about a week, at least a week of time just to pull together, bring my subcontractors there. We'll be on site, we'll measure, or, you know, if we have a set of plans, we'll pull our takeoffs and then we can come up with a full estimate of cost. And I think where we get in trouble with builders and where people just ask, hey, can I get a rough estimate and cost? And it's just ambiguous when they go into construction. And then you get in the process and you have a lot of miscommunication, and that's where cost overruns happen when the builder says, oh, I thought you were going to buy that. The owner says, hey, no, you were supposed to buy it, and it could be, you know, a pretty significant sum.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and
just like,
there's a lot of legwork that obviously goes into calling the utility
yeah,
companies and stuff like that. So I would imagine that you should charge. I would charge for that if I were you. So
yeah,
it
yeah, and
takes
it's
a lot of time.
right, and just like any relationship, you know, that we have, the more you come up with upfront design, more of expectations, those things can be addressed before you get, you know, further down the road, incurring costs, incurring delays on construction. So it is kind of a, you know, construction's kind of controlled chaos. And just like any relationship, it has to be, expectations have to be set like super good in the beginning, and then it can be a smooth process.
Yeah. So tell me about so for the homes that you have built from the lot up, what is like the average size? I'm sure that it ranges everywhere. So like what's
Yeah.
the smallest house that you've built from the ground up, and what's the largest?
Yeah, the smallest is like just casitas. You know, I do like 900 square feet. Those are fun. They're cute and small. It's relatively easy, but it's still the full process, like building a house. You still have all the same elements. It's just smaller.
Mhm.
Um, and then the larger range is like 8 or 9,000 square feet. It's all the same process. It just takes management and a really solid design. And I find that a lot of people, they tend to overlook things and say, "Oh, we'll figure that out as we get along um, in the building process." And I'm like, "No, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that." That's like marrying someone and saying, "Oh, we'll worry about the who. Do you want kids? I don't know. We'll worry about it later." Like,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, no, don't do that. Like, find out, like, really, do I want to work with this person? Is this going to work? You know, what is the design? Is it something that, you know, I'm passionate about doing? And that relationship is so important with your builder. It has to be, it's such a personal business. Even though it's, you know, we're dealing with a house, it's where people live, especially in a remodel. When I'm in your house every single day, like, we have to get along, you know, we have to work together.
Yeah. So have you built any like 2,000 square foot homes?
Yeah. So I've done a range, like all different sizes. And for me, again, it's the design. Like, everything is in the design. The pre-planning is the most important part, and it's often overlooked. People want to get started, they get excited, and I understand that. But you have to have all the details figured out.
And I imagine that you figured this out when you were doing all of your flipping and everything and
Yes.
learned. This is something
Yeah.
you learn as you go. And I know that
Exactly.
I have a couple agents under me right now that have been doing flipping, and you know,
Mhm.
it's really cool to watch their first couple projects come together and watch them go through all the trials and everything like that. But so you're also the project manager then.
Yeah, so I'm very hands-on, and I have guys that help me. I have a team that I work with, but I'm still on site. I'm just not an office guy, and I never have been, and I never will. And so I go with it. That's just how I do business. I prefer to be here, and I find that my clients like it because they'd rather deal with me than, you know, some superintendent that doesn't care. You know, I've bought and sold. Me and my wife had hundreds of flips over the years, so I do take an ownership of the project, and that's just kind of how I'm used to it. And so I'm here just managing, and I stop in and make sure everybody has, you know, product, energy drinks, whatever it is. You know, so I like to keep an eye on things.
So what would you say the average price per square foot is for a 2,000 square foot home that you've built, that projects that you've worked on?
Right. So that's a good question. People ask me that a lot. So in people out of town too, they're, oh, what's the price of building in Vegas? You know, like, oh, okay. So it just depends on your finishes, the size, and the quality of the house. So you could probably, if I was to say a rough estimate, okay, you start at probably 250 a square foot, maybe 200 on like a really basic house, all the way up to like high end would be 550 a square foot would be a really high end home with high end finishes, really, you know, expensive cabinets and countertops. But if you were to say, just give me a rough average on square footage cost, I would just throw out a number depending on what we do, $250 a square foot. You could build a really nice house for that. So, again, once you have a set of plans, then you can really get an accurate estimate. Because until then, it's all just fairly guesswork.
That's very interesting because I was reading an article the other day that was saying that gave you the averages of how much it costs to build a home in each state. And I'm sure, Nevada, we're huge, and most of Nevada is out in the middle of nowhere, but it was estimating $158 per square foot for a home in Nevada, which obviously would go up for location being in Vegas or maybe somewhere like, or the Vegas or the Nevada side of Tahoe. But so that's fascinating to me. So another thing I'm wondering is, these clients that come and they purchase a lot of time our agents will have to educate them on how to finance this and how to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I always have to coach them into telling their clients, you need to pay cash for the lot. And then moving into building the house, you need to either get that construction loan, which in Vegas, I believe the maximum is 729,000 or something around there. But how much should we let our clients know about these estimates fluctuating over time, and like how much over or under budget or percentage of what their actual budget is? What is the nominal fluctuation in the end cost of actually building?
Right. So like you mean like overruns or like if they wait, is the cost going to go up?
Well, more of like, okay, I budgeted $1 million for this project and it's going to end up costing 1.2.
Right. And that's
how much does that happen often? What are the things that make that fluctuate? What are the most common things you've seen in the homes you've built?
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's what people are always afraid of, and everybody really has a nightmare story of working with a builder, and I think a lot of that is people go into it with they just hand off everything to the builder, and some builders you can do that too, but the majority, the owner really has to do their due diligence and ask a lot of questions when you're estimating the job. You really can't just completely hand it off, in my opinion. You really have to stay involved, and I'm not saying micromanage, but at the same time, this is a lot of money, and this is like your asset, so you should protect your asset. And sometimes, like, I have a friend, he's building Blue Heron is actually building a house for him, and I recommended that either me or him hire his own agent to check the house to make sure it's building properly, just to have somebody that protects his asset and watches over it and make sure they're on schedule. And I think that's important. So as you meet with your builder, not all builders are the same, and you're going to have to go over that estimate like line by line. And the more you make changes to that design, the higher the cost will go. So if you say, oh, I want to, let's add more space, or let's add more cabinets, let's change the flooring. I know these things seem small, but they add up over time and they can really change the cost. So that's, again, I'll just go back to make sure your design is nailed down and you can at least get it like 98% done. And doing that will help you cut those overruns from happening, because if your builder doesn't, like, a lot of things do happen out of each house is different, and it's going to present different set of problems, and each lot, each scenario could be different. So it's hard to see the future a lot of times, and there's some things that just come up that nobody foresaw. They could be, the economy, COVID hit, and suddenly wood prices skyrocketed. They'd like tripled in some cases. So there's some factors that are out of the control of everybody, but I think what is in your control is a full set of plans, a full design, and like going over it 100 times. And you're going to be sick of it and you're going to hate it, but going over those designs, walking through the plans before you even start. That way, you or your builder can catch something. Oh, hey, I forgot to estimate this. I'm sorry. It's going to be another 10,000. That way, you know, ahead of time and you're not further down the road. And that just like completely surprises you.
Right. And I think we glossed over it, but I did want to touch back on the soil test because I have one coming in. So I want to know a
Yeah.
little bit more about what to look for. Can you
Right.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So each time you build a house, you have a geotechnical company that's going to test the soil, and that's for compaction. That's for what kind of soil is there. Is it going to erode? Is your house going to like crack? And remember in Pahrump years ago, all the houses were sinking, and I
Mhm.
remember previewing houses, and they were like 2 feet like difference inside the foundation, and the houses were like $4,000. That
Oh
was
my
like in
God.
that was like in 2008, 2009, because the soil just completely collapsed. And just because you're in a full community doesn't mean that you couldn't be in that little pocket, little area. So they, just to be safe, they'll pretty much x-ray the ground and see what kind of soil it is. They'll dig some holes and test it. And all that's just important for your foundation so you don't have settling and your foundation doesn't crack.
Okay, so is there anything specific that you've seen in Vegas recently or in the past 10 years that a soil test came back in a negative way?
Um, no, all mine have come back positive. Like they're all fine. But I know that there's some places in Boulder City where they had like huge problems in this big apartment complex. It started collapsing, so they had to do tons of work, and it's super expensive to go back and do the repairs. So that's, obviously your company is going to be liable for that. They're going to test it and keep that from happening. But you know, fortunately, Vegas is pretty good about like in the Southwest, and typically where people want to build, the areas are fine. And if they have, basically, if your soil is, it's not looking like it's compacting good enough, you just have to bring in more like type 2 dirt and compact it. So there's ways around it always to solve the problem.
What about caliche? Because I was looking at a lot with a client, and then there was this guy that was walking with his headphones on, and I thought he was like stalking us. And I was like, drive the car, go, go, go. And then he
Yeah.
like waved us down and was like, hey, I see you're looking at this lot. I live a few doors down, and there's caliche
Right.
under the soil. So tell us what caliche is, first of all, and if it affects building here in Vegas with or
Yeah.
without a basement, because I don't think you can build a basement through caliche.
Right. It's just basically like it's like a concrete material that's underground, and it's like the nightmare when you're building a pool, especially. So you'll dig, and usually the top layer, maybe 3 feet of just regular dirt, you're fine, and then you hit that, and you're like, oh no, because when you're building a pool, you have to chip it out, and they're like $225 an hour to jackhammer your pool out. So that's where the cost could really go up. And that's a hidden cost. So let's say you're going to buy it, or you're going to build a pool, and you budget a pool, okay, 100,000 for a pool, and then they come back and tell you, hey, we hit caliche, we're going to have to start jackhammering it. And that's a good example of where cost can, a hidden cost can go way up.
Now, would that show in the soil test?
Yeah, so they should be able to find that, and when they dig down, they're going to dig some holes, so they'll be able to tell you, how deep it is and where it's at.
Okay, cool. All right, I see somebody has their hand raised. Jesse, what's going on?
I was going to ask, if people come to you sometimes and don't have plans, do you have people that you refer out that can design a home for somebody?
Yes, totally. That's a good question. So if you come to me as a come to me to want to build you a home, we can design it, and my architects will draw it up, and we all work together really to come up with a good design that you want, and that takes time. So it's up to you whether you want to help design it, or we can hire a third party designer. I have designers that I work with, that can help with the finishes, the flow of the house. And also I've had people come to me with like pre-made designs that are like, hey, I was looking at these designs online and I love it, so this is the house I want to build.
And do you have like different options for like architects, or like who draws the floor
Right.
plan? Who
Yeah,
does that?
so the architect would do that. So basically it's a trifecta. The builder, the architect, and the designer all work together to come up with a set of plans. And
Do you
so we
have
have,
like different options for different architects? Like, is it common for somebody to go to a couple different architects and be like, I want to see who makes me the plan I like the most? Or do you
exactly,
just
yeah,
go to one?
right. We can shop, and I'm pretty versatile with who I work with. So I work with several. And a lot of times people have, a family member that's an architect or a good friend. Hey, I want my friend to design the house. Can you work with them? Yeah, of course. So I can work with any designer or architect that, an architect draws the plans and has a full set of plans for the house. And then we take those plans that the architect draws, and then we go to the engineers. The engineers would be structural, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical, which is your HVAC. So once you have a full set of architectural plans, then we can go and estimate what all the engineers are going to call to build that house. So it's kind of a multi-step process to come up with a really accurate estimate.
Okay, awesome. All right, so tell me a little bit about permitting, and what we should look for, what kind of problems you might run into.
Yeah, permitting it's like a necessary evil. I understand that there's a set of standards that the county, each area you build a house in has its own building department. So Henderson, Boulder City, Las Vegas, the Clark County, North Las Vegas. So depending on where the property is, that's who the building department will go through. And the process is, for me, it's pretty simple as long as you follow the correct steps, because we're dealing with a bureaucracy and the government here. So they move very slow. There's no incentive to move faster. So once we have a full set of plans, then we can submit for the permit. And that's probably a 6-week turnaround time, unless they have any additions or questions or any kind of changes we need to make. So it could take 6 to 8 weeks just to get like an answer back. So I would always, and whatever they tell you, I would always just assume a little bit more, just because they move pretty slow. So it's a long process before you, like if you came to me and said, hey, I want to build a house, let's get started. It could take, 4 or 5 months before we're ready to really have like a solid design and a plan to build the house.
So what type of permit is the first one what is it? Is it just a building permit?
Yeah. So, well, of course, it requires a permit to do all the utilities. So that would be started, and it would help to, so as you're doing the utilities, you want to have that coincide that with the design of the house, because you want to know where to put your electric box. You want to know where to bring in all the wires and the septic. So that it all kind of needs to work together at the same time to be a smooth process. And the sooner you come up with a house design in the process, the better. That way you can work with the utility companies on, delivering everything where it needs to go.
So as long as we're talking about timelines, let's say I want to build a 4,000 square foot spec home,
Sure.
level finishes. What are we looking at as far as timeline?
Like as far as permitting and build time?
Just from, hey, I
Yeah.
nice to meet you, Bristol. I want to build a house, to I'm moving in.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably tell you, hey, it's probably going to take up to a year, 8, 9 months. But give yourself a little buffer time.
Faster than I thought.
So, if you said, yeah, if you have the lot ready to go, like we could jump on it. We could go. It's what takes a long time is going back and forth, is trying to decide the design. If you don't make decisions quickly, if you're like, oh, I can't decide if I want a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, or, these things, those take up a lot of time. But if you make up your mind, like, hey, here's what I want, let's get it done. And then you can move forward, and then you can get the plans drawn, the estimate put together. And as long as it happens consecutively, you're good. But as soon as you screw up the workflow and throw things off and change plans and can't make up your mind, or, things change, that's what slows the process up.
Okay, so now that we're talking about design and stuff like that, is there like one central spot, when you go get a tract home new build and you get to pick out your finishes, like you have 3 choices. Is there a center where you can go that has like different doors, floors, whatever, or where do people go to like look, touch, and feel the things that they're going to be doing in the house?
Oh, that's a good question. I have all the suppliers in town, and it's like a wide range. It's all over town. I like to bring products to you. So I'll bring like a mood board. I'll bring flooring choices. I like to bring 3 choices after we have a full set of drawings. So the first is have a nice 3D set of drawings so you can visualize it and you see the space. Because there's nothing better than actually, seeing it on paper. And then bringing you samples to see what it's like and touch it and feel it. And once we do that, then you can really decide and move forward. And then, of course, lead times on product. Luckily, things are a little better than they were a couple of years ago. During the pandemic, people were waiting like 8-9 months for appliances.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I remember those times.
Terrible.
I want to go get a tract home. Oh, you're looking at 1.5 years.
Exactly, I know.
And the builders wouldn't even put the final price on anything because they're subject to go up, and they all capitalized on that.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I have a client that bought a house and they just want to redo their countertops, is that something that you do?
Yeah, I could do countertops. I'm like really busy. I have so many jobs going on, but I would just have to schedule it in. And I really treat each job like it's a custom job. So it just doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really fit in a cookie cutter box. Like I like the design and I'm too passionate about it just to like pawn it off on someone else. So I like to really, and everybody has a budget too. And let's be honest, if you can find a product that you like and you can save, $500 or $800 on it by shopping at a different store, like I'm all about that.
Okay, awesome. So is there anything else you want to touch on? Maybe tell us about your favorite project or something that, was unforeseen, that was the biggest mistake or mess up or something that happened in your career. I'm sure you've seen it all.
Oh, I've seen so much.
Tell us about a horror story and how to avoid it.
Yeah, I have a little horror story. So, I mean, it's not too crazy, but one time in Spanish Trails, we were flipping a house for a TV show, and we were trying to finish it up. And I had to go up in the attic, and I was like, okay, let me go check on some plumbing up here. And I went up there, and I about died. I couldn't believe it. There was literally like rat poop, like 8 inches deep, like throughout the entire attic. It was so disgusting. And I remember people telling me they had a rat problem, like a real bad rat problem in the golf community. And literally I discovered the rat hotel of the century. So I had to get rid of all of it to sell the house. Obviously they would have a meltdown if there was an inspection on that house. So I had to I was vacuuming rat crap for like 2 days, just like fully vacuuming. It was so disgusting.
That's so gross. I actually had a house in Boulder City, and the attic access was in the garage, but they had redone the garage and they sealed up the attic access. Well, my inspector ended up getting up there through through an outside window, the circular window. Mm-hmm. And he found a bunch of canned food that was like stored up there for when the zombies come. Yeah. And there were rats that had chewed through the cans and everything. And they were just living up there, totally nesting up there. So I can definitely relate to that. That is definitely a story that I have.
Yeah, inspection repair nightmare.
So when building a house from a lot up, and we're talking about inspections, how many inspections should we advise clients to get done on the work, and when are they done? Like when I get a new build, I tell my clients we want an inspection prior to the drywall going up and then one after the drywall goes up.
Like for your building department is going to inspect that. So your building department inspects the foundation to make sure they have all the rebar in place. And then once you pour the concrete, you start framing. they do a framing inspection. And then after your framing inspection, you do plumbing, electrical, and mechanical inspection. And then you pass that, you can do your insulation. They do an insulation inspection and then a drywall inspection to make sure that you're using enough screws in the drywall. And then after that, you can do a final inspection once you do
Okay.
dry. So
Is that all included in the estimate?
yeah, so that's all included. That's something the builder has to do, and that's up to the builder.
Okay.
So
And then as far as building materials for the house, I know that they're, you know, in different areas of the world, like, you know, in Florida, I'm just guessing here, but I'm guessing you probably shouldn't use like wood framing because it's so moist, or like, what is the typical type of framing that you use on a house out here in Vegas weather?
yeah, so in Florida, they have to, when you go there, you see they have all kinds of hurricane safety framing, and they have to build up higher foundations. They have like stem walls that are like 4 or 5 feet off the ground. We don't need that here, obviously. But you know, here compared to like the Northwest where I'm from, everything is on a slab here, so we don't have basements. Everything is a slab, so it's harder to move plumbing and electrical. So make sure you get it where you want it. Otherwise, you're going to be cutting concrete to move plumbing lines, and that's, you know, expensive, messy. So my advice is to get the house the way you want it before it's finished, because once you go back and make changes, something bad always happens. So if you go, oh, it's okay, we're just going to move it. Okay, so you bring in the contractors, they move the plumbing, they drop a wrench, they crack a tile. Now you have to fix the tile. You fix it, it's not straight. Like, it just snowballs out of control when you try to go back. So building is like a stream. You're totally fine as long as you're like floating down with the stream. But as soon as you try to swim upstream, it's bad. It's hard.
Yeah, and that's what I always tell my clients when we're walking through a house and you know, we're looking at older houses, a lot of things need to be redone in the areas that they're looking for. I'm like, look, we're looking for the bones. We're looking for,
Yeah.
you know, hopefully we don't have to move too many walls. I'm pointing out what what walls are load bearing.
Yeah.
And I'm also saying, you know, things like, well, you know, if they're like, oh, we'll just put a bathroom over here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
looking at the other side of the wall. And I'm like, well, if there's not a bathroom on the other side of the wall already, you know, you're talking about moving plumbing, which is probably never a good idea.
Yeah, it just can get expensive, you know, and then it can cause other problems, and then you got to make sure you have the right contractor to do it, because they could, you know, cause a mistake. You have a flood, then your house is, you know, then you got to redo stuff. So just manage it. And that's my advice: is you don't need to micromanage your contractor, but you do need to communicate and just sit with them and say, hey, look, if it's me or someone else, just say, hey, look, just educate me on the process so I can help you, because I want this to be the best building process for both of us. And that's kind of what I do. So it's just communicate back and forth just to make sure what's in your mind, in my mind, are the same thing.
Okay, awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch on before I ask if anybody has any questions?
I think we covered it. I mean, we're doing pretty good, I think.
We did. We covered a lot. A lot of those were my questions. So.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, this is Bristol. He is amazing, and I'm super appreciative of him coming on and talking all about this to us today. Does anybody have any questions for their clients or anything that has come up in the past before we wrap this up?
Any like inspection repairs or any kind of issues with that? I've done so many that I have a lot of realtor friends that call me.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Let me know.
I have a tip. So I think I've been involved in so many different transactions. And I find that if you ever have a client that is going to waive their inspection, be real careful, because I've seen those come back to bite them after the house closes. Then they come back and say, hey, this house has all these problems. And then there's a dispute. Well, you waived your inspection. We never really saw the report. You didn't request any repairs. And now you're upset that you found some stuff behind a wall or something is bad. So I would be very careful when they say, oh no, it looks good, everything is fine. I'd be like, have your red flags go up, because those kind of people end up suing you in the future, even though it wasn't your fault.
Oh yeah, definitely. Everybody always get an inspection done. If you're not advising your clients to get an inspection done. And when we do have clients that waive inspections, we have them actually sign another thing.
Yeah,
Saying that, I know my agent told me to get an inspection and
I
I'm
know.
still saying no. We did a lot of that during the pandemic. Well, I
Yeah.
wanted that all in writing for everybody. So
Yeah, that's good. I know,
definitely
and
a good tip.
people still just want to. People are crazy, like I know there's so many good clients and stuff, but always protect yourself. You never know. People come back and they just you think they're nice, but then they end up suing everybody just because I don't know. The people are
Yep.
crazy.
People are crazy. People are so happy these days also.
Yeah.
All right, Bristol. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank
am
you.
going to share your contact information with everyone in the brokerage. We do have about 200 realtors. So,
Great. Thank you.
and this will be available for replay to them. So they will all watch it eventually. And we'll have you on maybe every other month or something to
Yeah,
answer
that'd be great.
questions, tell us about some new projects.
Sounds good. Bye. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you so much, Bristol. Bye, everybody.
Bye.